Vincent van Gogh painted the most famous night sky in the history of art. He painted sunflowers printed on 1 million posters, mugs, and phone cases. And then he painted this. Grass, rocks, a ditch, no sky, no people, no stars. Most visitors give it a few seconds and move on, which makes it very hard to explain what happened in 2020. That year, this quiet little canvas was packed up, driven to Boston, and placed inside an X-ray machine. Sealed beneath the surface, there is something no living person had ever seen. Something Van Gogh put there with his own hands, and then made disappear. But to understand what was buried here and why, we have to go back to his darkest year. Its official name is Ravine, oil on canvas. Van Gogh painted it in October 1889, and today it hangs in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. The canvas measures 73 by 92 centimeters, roughly the size of an open suitcase. Look at it closely. There is no horizon, no sky, just churning rock, tangled roots and scrub pressing in from every edge. And every single brushstroke is the thing it depicts. This stroke is stone. This one, shadow. This one, a root clawing through clay. It feels violent, claustrophobic, alive. To understand why this painting hides something beneath it, we need to rewind 4 years, to a cold Dutch village where Van Gogh was obsessing over something completely different. December 1883. Van Gogh, 30 years old, penniless, a failure at every career he had ever attempted, moves back in with his parents in Nuenen, a small village in the south of the Netherlands. Flat land, gray skies, mud in every direction. The kind of place the rest of the world had completely forgotten about. And Van Gogh fell in love with it. Not with the landscape exactly, with the people working it. The weavers, the field hands, the women hunched over looms in dark cottages with low ceilings and smoke-blackened walls. He wanted to paint them honestly, raw, unflattering, no prettiness, no idealization. He threw himself into it with a ferocity that alarmed even his brother Theo. Over the next 2 years, he produced more than 200 studies, faces, hands, bent backs, cramped interiors. He filled sketchbooks, he wore out brushes, he badgered local peasant families into sitting for him, sometimes paying them a few cents for the privilege. He was building towards something. One painting that would say everything he wanted to say about labor and poverty and what it actually looked like to live close to the earth. He called it The Potato Eaters. 5 figures around a table, sharing a meal under a single hanging lamp. He wanted their faces to be, in his own words, the color of a dusty, unpeeled potato. Not beautiful, true. He finished it in April 1885. He was certain it was the most important thing he had ever made. Then, in late November of that same year, the local Catholic priest banned his parishioners from posing for Van Gogh. A young woman from the village had become pregnant. Rumors pointed at Vincent. No one ever proved it. But the priest's order was final, and it spread fast through Nuenen. Overnight, the faces disappeared. The studies stopped, the sittings ended. The 2-year obsession he had built his entire identity around, gone. Within months, Van Gogh left Nuenen for good. He would never set foot in the Netherlands again. Then came the scandal. Spring 1885. The Potato Eaters had just been completed. 2 years of obsessive preparation, dozens of studies, hundreds of hours in cramped peasant kitchens, and Van Gogh finally had the painting he believed would announce him to the world. He sent it to his brother Theo in Amsterdam with complete conviction. This was his masterwork. This was proof. The village of Nuenen had other concerns. A young woman in the parish fell pregnant. The father was unknown, or at least unnamed, but rumors moved quickly through a small Dutch village, and Van Gogh, the strange, intense foreigner who had spent 2 years inviting peasant women into private sittings, was blamed. The accusation was almost certainly false, but the local Catholic priest, Pastor Wilhelmus Begeman, needed no trial. He issued a ban. Parishioners were forbidden from posing for Van Gogh. Any peasant who sat for him risked consequences from the church. The order was swift, it was final. And it spread fast through Noonan. Overnight, the faces disappeared. Every study stopped, every sitting ended. The 2-year obsession he had built his entire artistic identity around, gone. Not because he had failed as a painter, but because a rumor in a village had decided his fate. What makes this moment so significant is what it did to his work. Van Gogh had been fixating on the human face as the ultimate subject. He wrote to Theo that he wanted to paint people the way Millet had, with weight and dignity and truth. He wanted their faces to carry the full burden of their lives, and now he was forbidden from painting them at all. He did not fight it, he packed. Within months, Van Gogh left Noonan for good. He was 32 years old, and the painting he had staked everything on had barely been noticed. The faces he had spent 2 years studying were now legally off limits. And somewhere in the chaos of leaving, a significant number of his early canvases were simply left behind, stored, sold off cheaply, or repurposed entirely. Repurposed. That word matters, because a painter with no money and a surplus of old canvas does not always start fresh. Sometimes he paints over what already exists, and that habit, born from poverty and scandal and exile, is exactly what makes what researchers found inside one of his later paintings so completely unexpected. February 1888. Van Gogh steps off a train in Arles in the south of France into a landscape so bright and so warm it must have felt like a different planet. He was 34. He had been in Paris for 2 years, absorbing the Impressionists, quarreling with everyone, drinking too much. He needed space, he needed light, he needed distance from every person who reminded him of what he had not yet become. Arles gave him all of it. The countryside was flat and golden, the sky a hard, unbroken blue. The light was unlike anything he had experienced in the gray Netherlands or the gray Paris winters. He rented 4 rooms in a building on the Place Lamartine, the Yellow House, as he would come to call it, and he began to paint at a pace that is difficult to comprehend even now. In 444 days in and around Arles, Van Gogh produced more than 200 paintings. That is roughly 1 painting every 2 days, sustained for over a year, while also drawing constantly and writing hundreds of letters. The pace was not healthy. He knew it was not healthy, but he could not stop. He had a plan. He wrote to his brother Theo about building a community, a studio of the South, he called it. A place where artists could live and work together, sharing costs, sharing ideas, pushing each other forward. He invited Paul Gauguin to come and join him. Gauguin arrived in October 1888, and for 9 weeks the 2 men worked side by side in the Yellow House. It did not go well. They admired each other and argued constantly. Gauguin was controlled, intellectual, methodical. Van Gogh was raw, urgent, emotional. Their arguments grew sharper. The tension inside that small yellow building became unbearable. On the night of December 23, 1888, something broke. The exact sequence of events has been debated for over a century. What is documented is the outcome. Van Gogh severed part of his own ear. He was found the following morning and hospitalized. Gauguin left Arles and never saw Van Gogh again. The dream of the Studio of the South died in a single night. The Yellow House fell quiet. The 200 paintings remained. And Van Gogh, recovering in a hospital bed, began to understand that he could not manage life alone. He made a decision. Not a defeat, he insisted, a practical choice. He would go somewhere with walls and structure and someone to check on him. He would commit himself voluntarily to an asylum. May 1889. Van Gogh walks through the gates of St. Paul de Mausolée, a former monastery converted into a psychiatric facility near the town of Saint-Rémy de Provence. He checked himself in. That detail matters. He was not committed by force or by family. He signed the papers himself, fully aware of what he was doing, and he wrote to Theo that he considered it the most reasonable thing available to him. The grounds were enclosed by old stone walls. Beyond them, olive groves and wheat fields stretched toward low hills. Inside, the corridors were long and dim, the other patients unpredictable, the days structured by meals and medication and silence. Van Gogh was given a room, and then, crucially, he was given a second room, a studio. The director of the asylum, Dr. Théophile Péjon, permitted him to paint, but only within the grounds. He was not allowed to leave unaccompanied, and during his early months, he rarely left at all. So he painted what was in front of him: the garden, the courtyard, the irises growing wild along the paths, the wheat field visible from his window. He painted obsessively, producing over 150 works during his 12 months at Saint-Rémy, including The Starry Night, completed in June 1889. But there was another painting made that same month, less celebrated, far less finished. A study of wild vegetation, tangled grass, thick undergrowth, no sky, no people, no horizon. He made a drawing of the same subject and sent it to Theo, labeled simply Wild Vegetation. The painted version was done on a canvas he already had, a spare, one of the old ones he had carried with him from place to place, through Paris, through Arles, into the asylum. He did not prepare a fresh surface, he painted directly over what was already there. What was already there, hidden beneath that tangle of grass and green, is what no one would discover for over 100 years. And the only reason anyone found it at all is because of a machine that can see through paint. October 1889, Saint-Rémy-de-Provence. Van Gogh had been inside the asylum walls for 5 months. Canvas was not a given. Paint was not a given. Every supply he had came through Theo, who was sending money he could barely spare, supporting a brother the art world had not yet decided to take seriously. Vincent knew this. He felt it with every request he made. So he did what he had always done. He reused what he had. The practice was not unusual for him. Scholars have identified at least 36 works painted over earlier compositions. But in October of 1889, the decision he made was particular. He took a canvas he had worked on months earlier, sometime around June of that year, and he turned it face down. Then he prepared the surface, and he painted the ravine directly over whatever had been there before. He wrote to Theo about the ravine in vivid, almost frightening terms. He called it a subject full of, in his own words, terrible passions. The painting consumed him, the gorge, the rushing water, the cliffs pressing in from either side. It was not a peaceful landscape, it was a confrontation. And he poured into it everything the summer inside those walls had done to him. What he buried underneath, that earlier composition, laid down during one of the most acute phases of his illness, he sealed away without ceremony. No note, no record of what had been there. He simply painted over it, stretched the new image across the old one, and sent the finished canvas to Theo in Paris. Theo mounted it, exhibited it. Eventually it passed through hands, across an ocean, and into the permanent collection of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, where it hung for decades, admired, studied, catalogued, and the thing underneath stayed buried. For 131 years, no living person saw what was beneath that tangle of rocks and green. No one even suspected there was something to see. The ravine was just the ravine, a difficult, violent landscape from a difficult, violent period, until a machine changed everything. In 2020, the conservation team at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston turned their attention to the ravine in a way no one had before. The painting had been examined over the years, of course, but this was different. This was systematic, methodical. The kind of examination that takes months, not hours, and produces data instead of impressions. The team included conservator Meta Chavans, working with standard X-ray plates first, the same technology hospitals have used for a century. She noticed something. Beneath the visible surface of the ravine, the density of the paint was wrong. Not randomly wrong, structurally wrong. There were shapes in the X-ray readout that did not belong to the ravine's composition. Lines that ran in directions the gorge did not run. Forms that the rocks and water could not explain. Something was there. To find out what, the team moved to a more powerful method, X-ray fluorescence mapping. The principle is precise. You fire a beam of X-rays at the canvas, point by point, and the atoms in the paint respond. Each element emits its own signature energy when excited. Lead speaks at one frequency, zinc at another. Mercury, the the basis of vermilion red at another still. The machine reads those signatures and maps them, layer by layer, element by element, across the entire surface. Lead saying, here. Zinc saying, here. Mercury saying, here. The resulting maps are not photographs. They are something stranger and more exact. Chemical portraits of a painting that no longer exists on the surface, reconstructed from the atoms that were left behind. Louis van Tilboer, senior researcher at the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, cross-checked the emerging data against the broader archive of Van Gogh's known work from the Saint-Remy period. The pigment combinations were consistent. The application method was consistent. Everything pointed to the same hand, the same months, the same asylum garden in the south of France. The machine had begun to speak, and what it was saying did not match anything anyone had catalogued. There was a composition under the ravine, deliberate, structured. Not a sketch, not an abandoned study, something more than that. What that something was, the team was not yet ready to say. The fluorescence maps came back layer by layer, and what they showed stopped the team. Beneath the ravine, beneath all that rock and rushing water and violent green, there was a dense, fully realized composition. Not a rough beginning, not an outline. A painting, substantially complete, pressed face first into the linen and buried under 18 months of subsequent work. The researchers traced the forms. They cross-referenced the emerging composition against Van Gogh's known drawings from the same period, and the match was immediate. The structure beneath the ravine connected directly to a drawing Van Gogh made in June of 1889, a work now known as wild vegetation. Dense, almost suffocating plant life, stalks pressing upward, leaves overlapping. A garden seen not from a comfortable distance, but from inside it, overwhelmed by it. He had drawn it, then he had painted it, then he had covered it up. What made this harder to absorb was the timing. June 1889 was not a stable month for Van Gogh. He had suffered a severe episode in April. By June, he was working again, briefly, in the asylum garden, his only permitted outdoor space, but he was fragile. The composition beneath the ravine was painted during acute illness, in a garden he could not leave, by a man who was not certain he would recover. And then, 4 months later, he buried it. In 2026, researchers examining a work in Rotterdam confirmed what Boston had found was not an isolated case. That canvas held not one hidden painting, but evidence of a pattern, what some have begun calling a triple painting, 3 distinct compositions on a single support. The data from multiple institutions, cross-referenced, pointed to something significant. As many as 1 in 3 of Van Gogh's early paintings may conceal another image beneath the surface. 1 in 3. The man was not just reusing canvas out of poverty, he was layering his own history, painting over himself, burying one moment under the next. And for over a century, the buried moments stayed buried, silent, pressed flat, hidden in plain sight on museum walls around the world. But the Boston scan had found one of them, and now, finally, after 131 years, it was about to come into the light. Every day, visitors walk past a small painting of a meadow and keep walking. Underneath it, she is still there.